Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech, the weeping has begun. The theatrics are rolling. You got to love college sports. We're talking tournament tiers on Locked On Texas Tech.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. And thanks as always for making us your first listen. Today's episode brought to you by the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. And stay with us for the Armada Team of the Week later on in the episode with the only Chris Level. I'm Casey Cowan. Chris, great to be back with you once again as we are biding our time. I'm doing a little thumb twiddling over here, trying to be very, very patient. Work on that. It is a virtue for a reason. Tough to do. 9:10 tip-off, even a little further on than, say, that 11 o'clock tip-off might have been. We got some time till it's Red Raiders and UNC Wilmington. But I got to say, even though coming up at the end of this week is the kickoff of one of those things that reminds me in a huge way how much I love college sports, there are already a few things afoot this week reminding me as to why I really love college sports. I want to get into some tournament tiers with you today already, Chris. We hadn't even tipped the thing off. We've got weeping, we've got moaning, we've got gnashing of teeth. It's inclusion, exclusion, and what it all says, I guess, about this tournament, because there are also some arguments being made in one direction or another as to whether or not this advances the cause of expansion or if this actually is some type of signal that, no, it's just fine the way it is. So I want to get to all of the above with you, but I know you enjoy, as a college sports fan and someone who's covered it for a long time, kind of the wildness that comes with this professional enterprise made up of loosely confederated, and I emphasize loosely confederated folks agreeing sort of on rules here or there. And say every once in a while it brings about a day where you're hearing about a governor suing people over athletic achievement or lack thereof. Probably in a state where, hey, you got a big fight to educate the youth and feed the impoverished and things like that. But no, today we're thinking college basketball. It's just things like that that remind me there's really nothing like this thing we call college sports, right?
Yeah, I mean, the emotions that it elicits is unprecedented because it gets people to stand in front of a podium and put National Corruption Athletic Association and point some fingers towards some folks that were in a boardroom and made a decision that didn't go over too well. And yeah, I had many opinions on the West Virginia thing, and it like, what the weird thing is, I felt like a lot of this like played out right in front of my eyes, literally, because I get, nobody said this, but that loss to Colorado in Kansas City, which by all accounts is just a terrible loss, was that the ammo that they were looking for? Just to kind of break a tie? I don't know. Nobody pointed to that specifically, but it sure didn't help West Virginia's case. And the reason I say it played out in front of my eyes is because I was meeting some folks in the hotel in the downtown Marriott in Kansas City last week, and this would have been on Wednesday night. And they had just lost. The Red Raiders hadn't even played a game yet. We'd been there since Tuesday, and you weren't playing until the next night. But West Virginia had just returned back to the hotel and had already packed up their stuff and were leaving. And their whole team and their coach was kind of mingling and telling family members goodbye. And it just was kind of this somber gathering. I mean, 10 feet in front of me. And I mean, I guess I just didn't know what you didn't know, but I don't think I thought that, man, that may cost them a bid. I felt like they were probably still in, but maybe it played their way. The thought in Kansas City was they went from switching places with Baylor. Like Baylor was thought to be like a Dayton type team, like one of the very last few in, and West Virginia was going to be on the 10 line or something. And I think that after the two games played out, Baylor had won that day and beaten Kansas State, West Virginia had lost, maybe they had just swapped. And so now it was West Virginia that may end up being the Dayton first four scenario and maybe dropped to the 11 line, and Baylor would have improved. But I guess West Virginia was out. So they are pissed, and I get it. And there's just, you can sue. There's just not any recourse here. I don't think you can squawk and
you can make a podium. They're podium level pissed. The podium work in a crunch I thought was really impressive. National Corrupt Athletic Association.
Oh, that's what it was. Yeah, corrupt. Sorry. Yeah, I screwed the C up. Yeah, I screwed the C up.
But that's amazing work, in a pinch. We only had the selection on Sunday. They've already got the podium worked up on Monday.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, because part of you wants to point and laugh, but which I think many are doing. However, it leads to the conversation that, man, there could be some years where this is Texas Tech. I mean, you're just not gonna, you're not.
Chris, the question I'd have about that is, would we then be justified in this extent of going this far? Is it something they just got to get over, or
it's a
what
bit,
would you make it a beef actually?
Well, it's a bit cringy. I would be a bit embarrassed if Texas Tech went this route. I think you would be pissed and want to lash out at somebody and want an answer.
I mean, we're talking Greg Abbott behind the podium in this
scenario. Yeah. So, and it's probably different, obviously, in West Virginia when it's the school in the state. Yep. That's it. It's the one brand that everybody's typically behind. And obviously in the state of Texas, there's, I don't know, 13, 14, 15 Division I colleges, it seems like. So
wait, but whenever Abbott or Cruz tweets about guns up or hook 'em or gig 'em or whatever, you don't think I kind of thought they were really throwing in with us when they did that. You're talking divided loyalties. All right, I just wanted some clarification there.
Yeah.
Because if we start balling, we're going to get some of those shout outs.
You already know the answer to all that. Which is interesting.
I do, what it says about the beef actually, or what it says about the tournament is one thing I want to put to you, because you've kind of brought this up already. And there are two levels to it: a conference's perspective, or a fan as a perspective of the event nationally, or just generally a college basketball sports fan. Does it actually speak to we've got to enlarge this thing, or does it suggest that we're fighting over this, which means we got plenty of spots actually? What do you think?
So, Brett Yormark sat up there in Kansas City Tuesday morning, and I guess a week ago today, as a matter of fact, and he kind of was asked about expansion, and I think he was point blank and said, I feel like 76 is the right number. And he laid it out in that Turner Broadcasting has this unbelievable asset, and I think 76 is the right number. He didn't really get into, I've got all these people that agree with me. He was just like, this is my opinion. What he did connect the dots on, the economics have to make sense, i.e. we want to expand it. It makes a lot of sense. And I think he's coming at it from his league standpoint, which that's his job. But I think that maybe Turner has been unwilling to pay for the extra inventory and increase the finances. And so at that point, it doesn't make sense. But he's coming at it from the Big 12 needs more access. And I've heard plenty of people in the last several months, leave it alone. It doesn't need to be expanded. It's like, come on, what are we doing? But I got to tell you, I totally get where Brett Yormark is coming from after watching what played out, because West Virginia, in my opinion, 1,000%, not even, they absolutely belonged in a 68-team field by every metric you want to come up with. Quad one, strong non-conference, quality. I mean, you can compare it, and for them to point to, because I tell you why this causes a problem for Grant McCaslin and for every other coach in the country, not in the SEC, and I'll get to that in a second, but for them to point to, well, Tucker DeVries was injured. He hasn't played for West Virginia. I think it's December the 6th. They built their entire tournament, their league record, which I guess was ended up going like 10-11 over those 21 games without Tucker DeVries being a part of it. And yeah, they had a couple of non-conference wins that were key, but they beat Iowa State, they beat Kansas and Allen Fieldhouse. Tucker DeVries wasn't a part of this, and for them to point to that is like a reason why is just absolute lunacy to me. Total. This is where you get people in a room. This is why people like say statistics, man, that you can spin them however you want. You can spin the numbers and the data because they just picked a few that supported this, but then they're going to point to a few others and telling me that North Carolina belongs in there because they have a great quad 2 record. First time I've ever heard that. First time. So, I mean, I just don't know what we're doing. And the reason I say it causes a problem for somebody like Grant or whoever.
First, today's episode brought to you by Nissan and the Armada Team of the Week, brought to you by our friends at Nissan and the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Each week, our Locked On College basketball experts are picking one team that stands apart. From top-seeded stars to the unexpected upsets, these guys are showcasing the strength and sheer power needed to push their team forward. This week's Armada and clear-cut Team of the Week, the Florida Gators. The Gators, led by Walter Clayton, 17 points per game, dominated the SEC tournament, winning each game by at least 9 points. When it comes to the Nissan Armada, they say go forth and conquer, and that's exactly what Florida has done. It's clear that our Team of the Week is out here ready to conquer the road ahead with confidence, just like you can in the all-new Nissan Armada or any of Nissan's outstanding vehicles. Take the Nissan Armada, Rogue, or Pathfinder and go find your next big adventure. Shop nissanusa.com. Today's episode brought to you by Fabric. Life moves fast, especially when you have a family. One day you're watching your kids take their first steps, and before you know it, they're off to college. And that's why securing their future is so important. And now Fabric by Gerber Life makes it simple to get term life insurance that fits your family's needs. With Fabric, you can apply for term life insurance online right from your couch. You could be covered in under 10 minutes. And in many cases, no health exam is required. You can get $1 million in coverage for less than $1 a day. So protecting your loved ones doesn't have to break the bank. And it goes beyond just life insurance. Fabric also offers free digital wills and access to investment accounts to help your plan for your children's future. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their families. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege. That's meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Assurance Company, not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions.
And the reason I say it causes a problem for somebody like Grant or whoever is that, and the easy answer is, well, hey, win more games, don't lose to Colorado, don't give them any ammunition. But you know how this works. There's going to be teams that do lose a few, but still belong in the tournament, okay? And like if I'm Grant McCaslin and any other head coach out there, I guess I don't know what I'm supposed to point to, and you know, because people they're getting real upset about conference records because I think Oklahoma and Texas were like 6-12. I think West Virginia was 10-10. Well, the SEC is that much better or whatever. Again, they don't really look at conference records, but what metric or how do I schedule the non-conference? What metric do I need to ensure that we are focusing on when we schedule our non-conference, when we look at this stuff? And I think right now you're kind of palms up, like, I'm not sure what to think. I don't think there was any like consensus on what you're supposed to do other than win a whole bunch of games, which some teams will, but there's plenty of teams that are, average that can make some noise in this thing. And those teams get into this tournament every year. So that's the tricky part is what message did it send? What are we telling coaches on what we want our sport to be? Because I don't know if they really know that right now. And that part is a bit scary / tricky because you're not in a situation where you're probably going to get the benefit of the doubt in some cases. And that part should make you nervous. But North Carolina, and here's the crazy thing. North Carolina, if this is a North Carolina, West Virginia conversation, North Carolina may actually win some games in this deal. You know, that people will be rooting against them and trying to, but they've won 8 of their last 10. Their only 2 losses, I think, are to Duke. No shame in that. But their league is just really bad. So I don't know. I do feel bad for West Virginia, because if I was in the same spot, I don't know if I'd be in front of a podium and wanting to, cry and sue and all that stuff. But it does suck, because I mean, the craziest thing is there's like 111 people that participate in a website called bracketmatrix.com. And people have seen this, but 111 people participate, and all 111 had West Virginia, I don't want to say like comfortably in, but in 111. They were all wrong, because they were going off of what they build it based on the metrics that they are told supposedly matters. And now we have set a new precedent. So in some ways, I'm all for expanding this bad boy, because it eliminates somebody getting hosed. And I just don't want that to be the Red Raiders at any point. But maybe the argument is just win more games. You didn't deserve to be in it, kind of deal. I don't know. But
yeah, kind of like getting screwed by a ref at the end of the game. You should have been ahead by more.
Yeah.
Kind of like getting screwed by a committee, so to speak. You should have been ahead by more, sort of. I think what you're making reference to a minute ago was lies, damn lies, and statistics whenever it comes down to all these various things that they can apply, I guess, in a committee room. And everybody knows, obviously, how that goes. I am a bit biased just toward the theatrics of this all, back to like the podium and whatnot. So I do want to invest more in the optics of the chair of the committee being the athletics director of the program that got in. And now we learned even a little bit further after, I think $1 million+ bonus to him if they make the tournament. I mean, you want to talk bad optics city. He's the mayor. So I think that's really fun to highlight, Chris. And ultimately, I just kind of feel like, kind of grading the beef that they've got and what it says about the tournament. And I'm someone as a fan, I don't want the tournament expanded. 68 is already a number I don't recognize nor cite. It's 64, and we've got play-in games. You know what I'm talking about. I can go a little old man on the lawn on this if I want to, but I'm someone that just doesn't want to see it necessarily expanded. I get the ploy by Brett Yormark to go that route, and you touched on something we've talked about year round, which is the marketing or perception battle that the Big 12 has got to wage and has got to fight, and it's probably the steepest hill to climb. So that doesn't really change. But at the same time, I wish maybe he would also emphasize just the fact that the absolute wrong call was made and just go all out. We kind of seem like we're in the era of the mittens kind of being dropped in a lot of different walks of life, not just sports, as far as public commentary on things. So I just wish maybe he'd go a little further that route. Like, hey, I don't know he can't say this, but my opinion would be, I don't know so much about expanding the tournament, but they got this horrifically wrong. Oh, and by the way, did you know there's all these little bullet points about the guy that leads the committee? I just wanted to mention that as well. Something along those lines. Again, I'm biased towards the soap opera, but I want to ask you from a fan perspective, because it's not just about the Big 12 or maybe even just about Texas Tech. I think for either of us as just enjoyers of this time of year. But in general, have you approached this thinking, yeah, more of what I enjoy is better, let's expand? Or have you sort of been personally hesitant to see that expansion as well?
Because what we're talking about is, I think 76 teams, basically what it does is right now in Dayton on Tuesday and Wednesday night, they have a doubleheader each night. And 2 16s play in one game each night, and 2 sets of 11 seeds play each night. And then those advance. I remember being in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and we were at the hotel, and you were about to play, I think it was Northern Kentucky in the first round. And I felt like you'd been there for a day or two. And like I was up for breakfast one morning, and like one of those teams that had won in Dayton, they had like literally just rolled in like 6 or 7 in the morning. And they were, I think, playing like later that night or early the next day or something. But it was like, whoa. I mean, I feel like we've been chilling out and resting up, practicing, watching the film, and these boys just rolled in. It's like, I mean, but that's part of it. You needed to be a bit better. But what we're talking about is they would take those double headers, right? And so on Tuesday and Wednesday, you just add a morning doubleheader on each day. So you'd get 8 games in Dayton instead of 4, I think is the way the math works. And
Daytime sports.
Yeah, that's right.
Weekday.
And so
I
you'd
love
have
it.
a full day on a Tuesday and Wednesday. So from that standpoint, I'm like, I'm okay with it, I guess. I don't hate it. I'm not some traditionalist. I mean, when they expanded it from 64 to 68, I've been, breathing air just fine and been okay with it. And I pay attention. I mean, I kind of laugh at some of the traditionalists, that the media that says, hey, leave it alone, this and that. But where your Mark is coming at it from, it's access. And he's coming at it from, our league is pretty good in basketball and has been. It has a really nice record in showing this over the last 7 to 10 years. And more access means more money. That's what he's tasked with. It means more units potentially, and more things that you could get pay out that the league could share in and all that. So that's where I get totally worried. But it wouldn't bother me, just because I think there may be a year that Texas Tech would be involved or benefit. I mean,
nah, we're not. Hey, let's don't go down that road.
Don't
go down that road.
I know you don't want to.
We're always safe. We're always going to be safe.
Hey, and I'll just take you back to say.
First, today's episode brought to you by Upwork. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. And with Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and a whole lot more. Experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. Plus, it's fast and easy. You can post a job free and simply, and within a day, multiple qualified candidates are there to choose from. So visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's at UPWORK.com, Upwork.com, to connect with top talent and grow your business today.
Remember when you're sitting there and Arizona State is here in town? You wouldn't have fallen this far, but you're sitting here and Arizona State's in town, and it's like double overtime, blah, 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 and you're looking at the week you have ahead of you. Like, if you squint enough, you could have seen like a 2 to 3 game losing streak, and it wouldn't have been anything to be ashamed of, but it would have dropped your situation. It's like the margins are still pretty thin. Fortunately, you survived that night and you were able to make some hay the next week, but I just know, it's just not, it cannot be too far off. And this is, you're sitting here, his life is a 3 seed, which there's still more room to improve, but it was really difficult to get to this point. And I saw West Virginia up close. They're legit. I mean, and they would have been really a handful if the coach's kid would have been healthy the whole year, but they could play defense and all that. But I guess, it goes back to, I guess the messages don't lose to Colorado and Kansas City. I don't know.
I'm not squinting to look with you at that possibility. You got me squinting like Costanza picking out squirrels. No, I'm going to assume the 3 seed life or better.
He was chewing on
Texas Tech life.
He was chewing on an onion. He thought it was an apple.
I do kind of feel like we're in for inevitable expansion. It just kind of seems like the nature of this era, and I mean, I love it. So it's really hard to get up in arms about more of something that you really enjoy. I don't even honestly know what it's rooted in as far as me resisting it to an extent. I guess, seeing it watered down further. I kind of feel like, Chris, if I knew that it was going to be more power conference inclusion, and that's really who would benefit from it, I'd probably embrace it a lot more, because I have always felt like there is a certain level of power conference team for some time now, not even considering this, new era after a reshuffle, where there's some category of those types of teams maybe that do get squeezed here or there. And I do like to see the underdog. I'm excited to see 33 and Drake, what they can do in round number 1. But I think sometimes, just plain and simply, some of those do get squeezed and left out. And occasionally Texas Tech has been in that type of neighborhood. So I don't know. But don't you think the inevitability of the expansion is probably something just to get accustomed to or kind of get used to?
It's a good question. Part of me isn't so sure. I think this comes down to what, again, because your Mark made it perfectly clear, it has to make financial sense. Because that's what, and he's telling on himself. That's why he wants, that they want more revenue. He's been tasked with trying to generate as much revenue for this league as he possibly can. And I do think he thinks his league would suck up some of those spots if it were to expand. And see, here's the thing. The SEC, they got their 14 teams in. There's only 16 teams in the league. I don't know if they would have benefited at all from it in expanding, but you would have. In this particular year, West Virginia surely, and then maybe a Cincinnati, if you go, if you have to, because so I don't know.
Aren't you rooting wholeheartedly against the SEC this postseason? I mean, the drunk regular season SEC like drum beaters, and I know there's some great teams there, but it's just amazing to think about how many of them have actually wound up making the cut.
This is where it's this in some weird way. Now that Oklahoma and Texas are out of your equation and all that, this is the one sporting event where it's a bit easier for me to kind of root for your conference brethren. Not that I'm sitting here rooting for Houston to cut down the nets or whatever, but I mean, because if you advance and Missouri beats Drake, that's what this is going to come down to. And like it's going to be shoved in your face repeatedly if Missouri were to beat you, if that's the game that you get on, well, I guess the SEC was just that much better than the Big 12 because here's a middle of the pack SEC team beating one of the, the second place Big 12 team, and that will get, and that right, wrong, or indifferent, that carries weight here and there, just like their non-conference record carried a lot of weight from November and December. So there's a little extra on it, I think, if you end up playing somebody like Missouri and any other matchup that you see. Not that I'm sitting there just waving pom-poms for BYU or Iowa State or whatever, but I mean, Iowa State could be staring at Ole Miss in the second round. Same premise.
True.
That's just kind of
how I was just texting with Jason, one of our Matador Mobsters, about that yesterday. He's asking me like, okay, is it Big 12 pride time?
Kind of.
I had to tell him conference pride has not come natural.
I know.
For many years now.
But you're do what you want. People can do what they want.
Right.
And whatever,
do what you want.
And whatever you root for, it doesn't really matter anyway, probably. However, it's a real thing, like the narratives. And I think I do agree with you though that Bubba Cunningham, because I think he got $104,000 bonus. I don't think it was $1 million. So I think it was $104,000, but still he got six figures. But I knew something was amiss whenever they get set to interview on the selection show and they set to interview the chairman, and he's got somebody next to him, which is, you don't see that. It's always one person. And I'm like, somebody's got to talk on his behalf because North Carolina, I mean, there's controversy. And for him to just go, I don't know, ask him. I wasn't in the room. If you think that these people aren't eating appetizers together and drinking lattes together, and that there's no sort of, scratching backs or anything like that, I just oceanfront property in Arizona to sell you kind of thing. I just that's BS. And they can claim hands off. I wasn't in the, save it, man. I mean,
hey,
that makes terrible
me think. Look. I want to ask you this question. I know we're running out of time, and it is, all due respect, UNCW week. So I don't want to go without mentioning the Seahawks on an episode, Chris. But you bring that up, and I'm seeing a lot of people, just because of the tone of the conversation this week, but seeing a lot of people suggesting the bracketologists are actually the group that should be deferred to when putting a bracket together, and people wondering why we have so many of these people who base all their stuff on these metrics, and they live and eat and breathe it. And we turn instead to these committees of these types of people we're describing.
Athletic directors. Yeah.
Conflict of interest everywhere. What do you think?
I don't disagree. I don't know how you would pick the, 12 to 15 bracketologists or whatever, but there's some of these people that actually go through mock selections. There's a ton of rules in place, and it's like BYU not being able to play on a Sunday. So you've got to put them in a Thursday, Saturday grouping. I mean, there's all these things, and then like you can't have conference matchups until the Sweet 16 and all this stuff. When you get 14 teams in a league, that there's things that are tricky, and people had an issue with Louisville dropping to an 8 seed, and then but also, hey, I mean, if I was Auburn, I mean, I can't exactly think that I'd be super excited to having to play Louisville, which is essentially a home game in Lexington. I mean, that's going to be a road game in many ways. So there's always things to gripe about. I do think that more than likely there's some sort of expansion because they don't talk about it, but it's going to come down to what Turner and CBS kind of ultimately say. If they just stand firm and say, we're tapped out, we're not paying anymore for this extra inventory, we're just not going to do it, then I don't know if they would try to shoehorn that deal in anyway or not. But that's my feeling on it. But we'll see. And how, I mean, if I'm Wilmington, I'm feeling pretty good about things like we got in this deal with no problems in old North Carolina up the road. They had to be gifted a get out of jail free card, and now they're having to go to Dayton and the whole deal. So I mean, I'm sure it's really interesting how that's playing in that state. I mean,
yeah, true.
Yeah, I mean, because those schools are also close to each other.
Yeah,
that I just think it's got to be interesting their life there in North Carolina. But
I'm glad you bring them up because before we get out of here, it is, with all due respect, UNC Wilmington week, and
Yes.
that means we can't just leave them out of an episode, for crying out loud. They're fitting the description of the first potential victim, potentially coming up on Thursday night. So I got a few facts to throw in. I want some from you too, Chris. Sammy C. Hawk is their mascot. You already knew that. They're going to be teal. Always dangerous to get a teal team in these early rounds. We've seen that in various directions. If the opponent is mostly an acronym and's got teal on the uniform, look out. And I do want to offer up, because it gives us the second chance to think of the great George Costanza. They've got one of the preeminent marine biology programs in the United States. That's what I got. So I know you're pouring over the Seahawks too. Can you kick us out anything that maybe you've been picking up on last 24 or so?
Well, I mean, a couple of things. I was telling you about these things before we went on, in that, as you see the bracket get announced and everybody starts tossing out facts and figures and all these different things, Wilmington is, I think, 1-6 in their NCAA tournament history. I think their lone win was over USC back in, I want to say, like 2004 maybe. But the other ones, I mean, they've hung. These are all single-digit losses, and this is a guy that coached under Kevin Keats for many years, and people are going, "Who is Kevin Keats?" He beat you in the first round last year for NC State. Yeah, and he's since been fired. He got $8 million.
He may be traveling out to watch his buddy.
Yeah, I was about to say he got $8 million, I think, to go. Maybe enroll himself into the marine biology program there at UNC Wilmington. I don't know.
Yeah, buddy.
And then over, I guess, since 18, I saw this factoid too, that since 18 NCAA tournament, 2 14s have beaten the 3 seed. You'll remember both of these for different reasons. One of them played out in front of me last year in downtown Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
Jack Golke was throwing them in from everywhere for the University of Oakland, and they beat Big Blue Nation and they beat Kentucky, and it was just like, I mean, haymaker after haymaker, and they upset Kentucky, and that ultimately sent John Calipari to Arkansas. I mean, there's a lot of ramifications there.
That's right,
and it probably sent NC State with a much easier path into the Sweet 16, because NC State, after they beat you, they played Oakland, and I think beat them up pretty good. Mm. The other one was SFA beating Texas. Remember that mention? Yeah, that's right. So, yeah, maybe it was Abilene Christian. It was a purple school that beat Texas. Anyways,
I do remember. You're talking recently.
ACU I think it was ACU. Sorry, I had the pro. See, I haven't slept
That's
much.
why you stayed at the end of the program, so you get a little long.
Yeah,
a little bit of a painful one for us as well. But that's all right. That builds character. That
one cost Shaka Smart. I think that's what
right.
Shaka Smart was no more after that either. So, and then well, we know kind of what that spun into, because that ultimately caused your basketball coach to leave. So, anyways, yeah,
all right.
There you go.
All right, stayed around a little too long. Now I'm not liking that trip down memory lane.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, let's pull out of the spin cycle before we. UNCW, a proud program. Been on a nice little run here over the last few years, and I've had some nice ones gone by a little further back as well. So obviously to be taken serious. And if that's not enough to tell you that, let me tell you this, because they also have strong film industry ties. Chris, Wilmington is called Hollywood East by the residents of Wilmington. I don't know.
Okay.
Anyway, that's all I got. The bucket is empty for today. We roll on through this week as we ramp up towards 9-10-ish Thursday night from Wichita, Kansas. So plenty more to come. Stick with us. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you miss nothing. Chris, appreciate your time. As always, love hopping around on these Chris level lily pads of perspective. You always offer up things.
And I tell you who would appreciate me slipping up there and saying that was SFA was our man Matt Breyer. So Axum Jacks, Matt, because he would have been like, yeah, I'm going to a school that pulled off 14 upsets, so you can win there. You can win big there. But no, it was ACU. So sorry about that.
Shout out to the Jacks anyway.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So anyway, yeah, we'll get back tomorrow and kind of talk to you about UNC Wilmington a little bit, and I want to try to give you some perspective on some comparisons about how this team's going to play, similar to anybody in the Big 12. Can we connect any dots there? And then there's the Kevin Keats part of it. I think is important to note well on how they may play or their mindset coming into this one. And Grant has seen a Coach Siddle coach team up close and personal too a couple years ago in the Bahamas. So anyway, we'll do that when we resume.
Heck yeah, getting ready for Thursday night, and it'll be here before we know it. Play-in games almost upon us. Make sure that the titling is right. Language is important. For Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Thanks so much for being out there. As always, shout out to the everydayers in the Matador Mob. Hit the show notes and find a link to a free 14-day trial. That is your direct line to Chris and myself with one-on-one text sent straight to your phone. Hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.